The temperature outside was -12 DC, 10.4 DGF. A strong wind whipped thick snowflakes around the suburban forest of Munich. No one ventured out on this winter night except for Bruno, an old German shepherd, his fur grizzled, running as fast as he could through the deep snow. On his back was Emil, a 2-year-old boy wrapped in a tattered blanket, his lips blue from the cold. His cries had long ceased, only a faint breath remained, puffing against Bruno's neck. The dog's left paw was bleeding, each step leaving a red streak on the snow, but he didn't stop. A few kilometers away, Anno, Emil's mother, lay motionless in a ravine. Her car had skidded on the icy road, plunging down the slope, overturned in the middle of the forest. Before losing consciousness, she used her last ounce of strength to tie Emil onto Bruno's back. Her hands trembling, eyes blurred with tears, she looked at the dog and said, "Bruno, save my son, please." Her voice was faint, but Bruno understood. He howled, a long, sharp sound that echoed through the night. It was a promise. Then he turned and bolted, leaving Anna amidst the wreckage. Bruno wasn't a hunting dog or a rescue dog. He was a house dog, 10 years old, having lived with Anna since she was a little girl. When Anna's husband died in a construction accident 2 years ago, Bruno was her only comfort. He often stayed by her side through her tearful nights, and when Emil was born, he slept at the foot of the boy's crib every night. Now he knew Emil was all that Anna had left. Stopping wasn't an option. Bruno's paw throbbed, the wound from a piece of broken glass from the car cutting deep into the flesh. The blood flowed more as he accelerated, but his red-rimmed eyes didn't waver. Emil weighed less than 10 kilograms, 22 pounds, but for the aging Bruno, the boy was a heavy burden. The blanket wrapped around Emil was loosening, and the cold wind blew through, making him shiver. Bruno could feel it, but he could do nothing but keep running. Anna had raised Bruno since he was a puppy. She found him in a trash can near her house, emaciated, his eyes full of fear. She took him home, naming him Bruno because she liked the strong name. Over the years, he grew up beside her, utterly loyal. When she moved back to her hometown after her husband's death, Bruno followed, even though old age made him slower. Tonight, he was no longer slow. He ran as if the whole world depended on every step. The howl from before still echoed in Bruno's head. It wasn't just a promise to Anna, but a vow to himself. Emil had to live. Even if his paw hurt, even if he was bleeding, even if he was freezing, he couldn't give up. Anna had entrusted him with her son's life, and Bruno would rather die than fail. Half an hour passed. Emil no longer moved. Bruno gritted his teeth and picked up speed. In the distance, a faint light appeared. Maybe hope, maybe an illusion. He didn't care. He only knew to run, carrying Anna's desperate whisper and Emil's fragile breath. Bruno ran through the forest, his left paw bleeding relentlessly. The wound from the broken glass cut deep, each step causing more blood to flow, staining the snow beneath his feet red. He didn't care. On his back, Emil lay still, his breath so faint it was almost imperceptible. The blanket wrapped around the boy loosened, and the cold wind blew through, causing it to slip to one side. Bruno stopped, turned his head, and used his muzzle to pull the blanket up to cover Emil. The movement was slow but deliberate. He couldn't let the boy freeze to death. Then he continued running. Bruno's legs trembled. Old age and the wound were exhausting him quickly. It had been over 40 minutes since they left Anna. Emil had to reach safety within an hour or they would both die. Bruno knew it, not with reason but with instinct. He had seen Anna care for Emil through nights of high fever, had heard her sing lullabies to put the boy to sleep. Emil was Anna's life, and now Bruno's. Blood from his paw flowed in a stream, dripping onto the snow. At times he slipped and fell, his claws scratching at the hard ice to get back on his feet. Emil was heavier than he thought, even though the boy was only 2 years old. Bruno clenched his jaw, exhaling white puffs in the cold air. His red-rimmed eyes still looked straight ahead, unwavering. He didn't know where they were going, only that he had to run toward the light. Memories of Anna flashed through Bruno's head. He remembered the day she found him in the trash can, small and hungry. She picked him up, gave him warm milk, and called him Bruno with a radiant smile. He remembered the times she hugged him and cried after her husband died, her tears soaking his fur. He remembered the newborn Émile, tiny in his crib, his tiny hand grasping his nose. Bruno had never left them. Tonight would be no different. The snow fell thicker, sticking to Bruno's fur, freezing around the wound. Pain spread throughout his left leg, but he didn't stop. Once the blanket slipped off Émile again. Bruno stopped again, pulled the blanket up, this time using his entire jaw to hold it tight. Émile's breath was fainter than before, no longer even. Bruno howled a short sound, as if urging himself on. He had to be faster. Running for another 10 minutes, Bruno's legs began to go numb. Too much blood had flowed, leaving a long trail behind him. He fell again, this time for longer. Émile slipped off his back, falling into the snow. Bruno panicked, getting up immediately, using his muzzle to push the boy back onto his back. Émile was ice cold, unresponsive. Bruno howled again, a hoarse, painful howl. He couldn't lose Émile. He couldn't fail Anna. He bit down on the blanket, securing Émile more tightly, then continued running. His eyes blurred, but he didn't give up. He remembered Anna telling him, when Émile was born, "Bruno, you have to look after Émile for me, okay?" At the time he didn't understand, only wagged his tail. Now he understood. Looking after Émile wasn't just lying next to his crib, but keeping the boy alive, even if he had to die. Bruno's leg now only had 3 functional limbs. His left leg was almost useless, dragging across the snow. More blood spread out, but he didn't feel the pain anymore. He only felt Émile on his back, the boy's breath fading. Bruno gritted his teeth and sped up. In the distance, a faint light appeared. Maybe it was a street lamp, maybe a medical station. He didn't know, but it was the only goal. Halfway there, Émile stopped breathing. Bruno felt it. He stopped, turned his head and licked the boy's face. No response. He howled, the longest howl of the night, echoing through the forest. Then he bit down on the blanket and ran faster than ever. If Émile died, he would never forgive himself. If Émile died, Anna would never forgive him. Running for another 10 minutes, the light grew closer. Bruno saw a small building, its door closed. It was a medical station. He rushed towards it, his claws scratching at the snow, blood flowing in puddles beneath his paws. Émile was still motionless. Bruno clenched his jaw, using his last bit of strength to reach the door. He scratched at the door, weakly but continuously. No one answered. He scratched harder, one of his claws breaking, blood seeping into the wood of the door. He fell out of strength. Émile lay on his back, ice cold. Bruno turned his head, looking at the boy for the last time. His eyes were dim, but he still tried to keep them open. He howled a small sound as an apology to Anna. Then he closed his eyes, his breath slowing down. Blood from his paw spread out, merging with the snow into a long red streak. Bruno didn't know if Émile was still alive. He didn't know if he had succeeded. He only knew he had done his best. In his head, an image of Anna appeared, smiling as she did the day she first met him. He wanted to tell her, "I tried, Anna. I tried." The medical station door remained closed. Bruno lay there, motionless, waiting. So did Émile. The cold wind blew through, carrying his last howl, faint but persistent. He had traveled the journey of blood and ice, carrying his promise to Anna to the very last second. Bruno lay motionless in front of the medical station door, but the journey there was far from simple. After scratching at the door with his last bit of strength, he had traversed a long road filled with pain and despair. Now, going back to the moment before he collapsed, everything was still a fierce battle between will and death. When the light of the medical station appeared faintly in the distance, Bruno no longer heard Émile's breath. The boy was ice cold on his back, unmoving. Bruno stopped, turned his head, and used his muzzle to nudge Émile's face. No response. He licked the boy's cheek, feeling the bone-chilling cold. A short howl escaped his throat, hoarse and trembling. He didn't know if Émile was still alive, but he couldn't give up. Anna had entrusted Émile to him, and he would carry the boy to the end. Bruno's left paw was now just a torn mass of flesh. Blood flowed in puddles every time he took a step, leaving a red trail stretching hundreds of meters behind. His right leg was also beginning to weaken, his claws scratching at the snow to maintain balance. He clenched his jaw, dragging his body towards the light. The cold wind blew through, carrying the skin-cutting cold. His grey fur was covered in ice, heavy, but he didn't stop. He remembered once when Emil had a high fever when the boy was just 1 year old. Anna had stayed up all night, holding Emil in her arms, singing lullabies in a hoarse voice. Bruno lay at her feet, his eyes wide open watching them. When Emil's fever broke, Anna bent down and stroked his head, saying, "Thank you for being here, Bruno." Now, he wanted Anna to say that again. But to do that, Emil had to live. Running for a few more minutes, Bruno fell for the third time. This time, he didn't get up right away. Snow covered his fur, seeping into the wound, making it sting like he was being stabbed. Emil slipped off his back, falling into the snow beside him. Bruno panicked, using his muzzle to push the boy up. Emil was heavier than he thought, or perhaps he was just too weak. He bit down on the blanket, pulling Emil back onto his back, securing it with his jaw. His teeth clenched so hard that one of them loosened, but he didn't let go. He stood up, staggering. His left leg was now completely numb, dragging across the snow like a log. The blood flowed slower, not because the wound was healing, but because his body was exhausted. His red-rimmed eyes dimmed, but the light ahead was clearer. It was the only hope. Bruno howled a small sound, as if reminding himself to keep going. Running for another 10 steps, he fell again. This time, Emil didn't fall, but Bruno couldn't get up. He lay there, panting, his white breath puffing out in the air. He turned his head, looking at Emil. The boy was still motionless, his lips black and blue. Bruno licked Emil's hand, ice cold. He howled again, a faint howl as if begging the boy to wake up. There was no response. He gritted his teeth, braced his feet to stand up, even though every movement was a pain in his heart. The light was now only a few dozen meters away. Bruno saw more clearly. A small building, its wooden door closed tight. It was the medical station. He didn't know the name, didn't know who was there, only knew that it was the place that could save Emil. He rushed forward, not running but dragging his body. His left leg didn't move, his right leg trembled, but he didn't stop. Blood from his paw seeped into the snow, creating a red trail longer than ever. Halfway there, a strong wind blew through. The blanket on Emil blew away, exposing the small blue body. Bruno stopped, turning his head to look for the blanket. He saw the blanket caught on a branch nearby. He crawled over, bit the blanket, pulled it back, even though every step tore the wound wider. He used his jaw to wrap the blanket around Emil, securing it tightly. His breath was heavy, but he didn't give up. Emil had to be kept warm. Continuing to run, Bruno felt his body lighten, not because Emil was lighter, but because he was losing sensation. His eyes blurred, only seeing the faint light ahead. He couldn't hear anything but the wind and the slowing heartbeat of his own. He howled a final sound, hoarse as a call to Anna. "I'm trying here." When he was 10 meters away from the medical station, Bruno fell for the last time. He couldn't get up again. Emil was still on his back, motionless. Bruno turned his head, licking the boy's hand again. No response. He scratched his feet on the snow, trying to crawl to the door. Blood from his paw spread out, staining the entire area red. He clenched his jaw, dragging his body a few more meters to the door. He scratched at the door, his weak claws touching the wood. No one answered. He scratched again, harder, even though one of his claws broke off. Blood from his paw seeped into the door crack, deep red. He howled, a small sound almost dying out. He had no strength left. Emil was still ice cold. Bruno turned his head, looking at the boy for the last time. His eyes closed halfway, but he still tried to keep them open. He wanted to see Emil wake up, even just once. He remembered Anna once hugging him, saying, "Bruno, you are my family." Now, that family was just Emil. If Emil died, Bruno didn't know how he would face Anna. He scratched the door for the last time, using all his remaining strength. The door didn't open. He fell, his head resting against the wood, his breath slowing down. Blood from his paw flowed in puddles, merging with the snow. Bruno didn't know if anyone had heard. He didn't know if Emil was still alive. He only knew that he had reached the destination, bringing Emil to a safe place, as promised to Anna. In his head, an image of Anna appeared, smiling, stroking his head as she used to. He wanted to tell her, "I did it, Anna. I brought Emil here." He lay there, motionless, waiting. The cold wind blew through, carrying his final howl, faint but persistent. Bruno had fought his best in the darkness, not giving up even though his body was broken. He didn't know what would happen next, but he had completed his mission. Emil was right here, at the door, and that was all he could do. Inside the medical station, Nurse Nora was cleaning up to go home when she heard a faint scratching sound outside the door. She stopped, thinking it was the wind, but the sound came again, more urgent. When she opened the door, Nora almost screamed. Bruno lay there, his whole body trembling, his eyes already closed tight. On his back was Emil, blue and motionless. Nora knelt down, her hands trembling as she touched the boy, then shouted loudly for the emergency team. "He has a heartbeat! Hurry!" "The child has severe hypothermia, immediate resuscitation." Thomas, the on-call staff member, rushed out from the back room. He saw the scene and immediately ran to grab a stretcher. Nora removed Emil from Bruno's back, placing him on the snow for a second to check him. His heartbeat was so weak that she had to press her ear to his chest to hear it. "He's alive! Get him inside!" she shouted, her voice breaking. Thomas brought the stretcher, and the two of them put Emil on it and ran into the station. The door closed, leaving Bruno lying outside in the snow. In the chaos, Nora looked down at Bruno. The dog wasn't moving, blood from his paw staining the snow red. She knelt beside him, placing her hand on his head. "You did it. Rest now," she said, her voice choked. A tear rolled from the corner of Bruno's eye, freezing as soon as it touched the ground, as if he had heard and let go. Nora stood up, running after Emil, but the image of that tear remained etched in her mind. Inside, Nora and Thomas placed Emil on the emergency table. Nora removed the wet blanket, replacing it with a warm blanket from the cabinet. "Heater, turn it on," she ordered. Thomas ran to the corner of the room, turned on the heater and set the temperature to maximum. Nora took a heart rate monitor, attaching it to Emil's finger. "Heart rate 35, too low." She began chest compressions, her hands pressing gently but evenly on the small chest. "Don't die, hang in there," she muttered, sweat dripping down her forehead. Thomas brought warm bags, placing them on Emil's chest and abdomen. "Should we call a helicopter?" he asked. Nora nodded. "Call now! He won't last long." Thomas ran to the intercom, contacting the city hospital. Nora continued chest compressions, counting the beats in her head. A minute passed. Emil's heart rate increased to 40. "Good, good!" She breathed a sigh of relief but didn't stop. Outside the door, Bruno lay still. His breath slowed, almost gone. The wind blew through, covering his fur with snow, drying the blood into dark red patches. He didn't know Emil was being saved. He didn't hear Nora's shouts, the rumbling of the heater. He just lay there, cold and tired, waiting for death. In the station, Emil shivered slightly. Nora cheered. "He's responding! Thomas, more blankets!" Thomas brought another blanket, wrapping the boy tightly. The heart rate increased to 45, then 50. Nora stopped chest compressions, checking his breathing. "He's breathing. Weak, but breathing." She hugged Emil, tears rolling down her cheeks. "You did it. Hang in there," she whispered. Thomas returned. "The helicopter will be here in 15 minutes." Nora nodded, but her eyes darted to the door. She remembered Bruno running to open the door. The dog was still lying there, not moving. She knelt down, checking him. His breath was thin as a thread, almost completely stopped. "Thomas, help me bring him in," she called loudly. Thomas ran out, and the two of them lifted Bruno up. He was heavy, his wet fur and blood making their hands slippery. They placed Bruno near the heater, wrapping a blanket around him. Nora took a warm bag, placing it on his chest. "You have to live. You saved the boy," she said, her voice trembling. But Bruno didn't respond. Thomas stood behind. "He's too weak, Nora. He won't make it." She shook her head. "No. He has to live." Nora pressed lightly on Bruno's chest, as she had with Emil. There was no clear heartbeat. She tried again, tears falling. "You can't die. You're a hero," she murmured. But Bruno remained silent, his body getting colder. Nora sat down, holding her head. She remembered the scratching at the door, remembered his tear. He had done everything but couldn't save himself. The sound of helicopter blades echoed. Nora stood up, wiping away her tears. The medical team rushed in, placing Emil on a specialized stretcher. Heart rate 55, severe hypothermia, needs the hospital immediately, Nora reported. The medical team nodded, taking Emil away. Before the door closed, she looked at Bruno one last time. "Thank you," she said, then turned around and went inside. Bruno lay there, covered in blankets, blood dried on the floor. He didn't know Emil was alive. He didn't know he had succeeded. His last tear was the mark of a completed mission, even if the price was his life. 3 days later, Emil survived in the Munich hospital. Anna was found in the ravine, alive, though in a coma. The helicopter brought her in, and she woke up after a week, crying when she heard the story of Bruno saving Emil. Bruno lay motionless at the veterinary clinic, but still breathing, weakly but resiliently. A month later, Anna was discharged from the hospital. She came to the veterinary clinic, holding Emil in her arms. The old and frail Bruno, his fur grey, lay on the floor. Emil toddled over, placing his small hand on his muzzle, calling, "Bru! Bru!" Bruno opened his eyes, clouded but brightening when he saw the boy. His tail wagged slightly, the first time in days. Anna knelt down, tears falling. She stroked Bruno's fur, whispering, "Thank you for bringing my son back." Bruno licked her hand, his breath slow but warm. He howled, a small sound, no longer in pain, only peaceful. Emil laughed, hugging Bruno's neck, whispering, "Bru, good." Nora stood beside, wiping away tears. She saw the miracle in Bruno's eyes, not survival, but the love that held him back for this moment. Anna hugged both Emil and Bruno, choking with emotion. "We are family, forever." Bruno closed his eyes, lying peacefully beside Emil and Anna. He didn't need to howl anymore. His promise to Anna was complete. Under the faint sunlight, 3 souls were connected, overcoming the dark night and death, forever inseparable.